name is Rob Willis. I wanted to share a little technique that I've learned over the years for flying 172s. I have a friend who's learning to fly, and he's having a heck of a time. So I've tried to describe this, and it's not easy to describe. So I thought I'd record this video to show you how I learned to master landing a 172. Um, my training and experience was almost all for 40 years of flying in almost all in archers and warriors and turbo arrows and on a low-wing aircraft. So the advantage of a low-wing aircraft when it comes to landing is that you have a buffer, you have a ground effect, just as you're doing your landing flare, which makes it nice and easy to navigate those final few seconds of landing. And it's an advantage that you have in low-wing that you don't have in a 172. So you have to accomplish the same thing in the 172 by virtue of the stick instead of the added benefit of the ground effect. So the instructors that I've gone through have always trained the same way. They all say the same thing. They want you to get the airplane 6 to 10 inches off the ground, get the wheel 6 to 10 inches off the ground, hold it there, and then until the plane stops flying, and then let it settle on the ground. Well, that's easier said than done, because when you have some winds, a little crosswind, a little gusty winds, and you're trying what you're having your student do is basically do helicopter hovering type of technique that a lot of us don't have the skills to do. I don't fly helicopters, so I find that end up with a I find that when I do that technique, my landing is not as reliable as the technique I'm going to show. I have the simulator set up here, and this works, by the way, perfectly in in every airplane that I fly in whether real world or simulator. It works exactly the same. So I'm going to show it in a 172, and I have a 172 set up here. I have the G1000 display in the corner, and the only reason I have it here is so I can see the airspeed and the vertical speed. And the reason I have the G1000 showing because I don't want the gamut of instruments here to show and get in the way as we do our landing flare. Also, I want to mention that I have the zoom here set to 1.0. The simulation tends to put you at 0.3 zoom when you start up, which is really nice. But it's a really good, really nice panorama, about 120-degree arc, which is nice for flying cross country. But when it comes to landing, you really don't want. You can see at at 0.3 how far that runway is from you, and at 1.0, it's much more realistic. So that's the only other thing I've done here to demonstrate this. The first thing I want to do is do a power on landing. I'm not gonna touch the controls. I'm just gonna fly the thing and drive it right onto the ground. And what this does is demonstrates the validity of this technique from that perspective. So I'm going to get I'm going to set it up I'm starting to see the Vazis come in here, and as I approach this, I'm going to get a sight picture of this V, and I'm going to hold that V in exactly the same position as throughout the approach. And give it some power here. Get it back to about 60 something, and we're going to hold that. So I'm not looking at the asphalt in front of me. The problem The problem with looking at the asphalt in front of you is that when you get close to the runway, especially a wider runway, all you have is a great big black two-dimensional piece here to look at, and to use that to accomplish a peripheral the peripheral vision you need to control the rate of descent of the airplane is not easy, because you see the the tarmac is coming toward you, and it is a harder perspective than to watch out here to determine what the airplane is doing. So what I'm doing is I'm just watching this, and I'm focused on this. I don't even look at this until I look and except to glance down to find out when I'm 50 feet over the ground so that I can chop the power. So we're just going to drive this on, And I want you to watch this. As I watch, as I maintain a constant speed, a constant descent. I'm not looking at vertical descent or anything. I am just maintaining a sight view of the perspective of the runway to be the same. I'm pulling back, I'm pulling back, pulling back. I'm not changing a thing. So there you go. Almost, we're basically bouncing. Just look at that. We touch down so gently that the airplane is porpoising basically. So let's do a 20-second review here. Oops. So this is going to be like a 3-point landing, but you can see how gentle this is. Look at that. And what we'll do is we're going to skim the ground, and the plane is just going to bounce. And of course, this is not the way you land an airplane, but it's demonstrating the effectiveness of the technique is what I'm getting at. See that? So let's do this again, only we're going to land it for real this time. Let me start the simulation again. Okay. And we're gonna do the same thing, only this time, I'm gonna line it up against the vase. He's coming in. This time I'm going to I'm going to watch for when we're 50 feet over the ground, and we're going to chop the power. Now again, as I get closer to the ground, you don't do this up there. You don't do this at the higher altitude. You use vertical speed and airspeed at higher altitude. But when you get closer down here, you're watching for the rate of change in this. See, I'm pulling back because it's changing too quick. See, I'm pulling back because it's changing too quick. I'm pulling back further and further. So as we get about 50 feet off the ground, I'm making these stripes along the side of the runway stay constant. I'm pulling back further, further, and further, and further, and further. And we do 20-second view. I can do this all day. This technique is so effective. I could do this all day. So let me do this again, and I want to show you the um, the how it looks in both directions. Again, I'm going to pause, taking the pause off, kind of diving for the runway here to get myself situated. I'm just basically using the vases until I get closer to the ground. Okay, I'm trimming. I got a little slow, so I'm pulling back. It's really important when you're landing, to get that airspeed very precisely controlled. And of course, airspeed is controlled when you're on the vase, you're on the glide slope by power. So as we get closer, I'm watching the runway. I'm watching these edges, and now if I'm going down too quickly, see how they're changing? If I'm going up too quickly, see how they're changing? If I'm going right on, I get it to a point where they're not changing at all. And I'm watching again. They always say, look at the end of the runway, look at the end of the runway. I'm not looking at the end of the runway. I'm watching with my peripheral vision both of these stripes here to keep them from changing. And at 50 feet, I'll pull the power. And I'm going to hold the stripes from changing. And I'm doing this with a little bit of a disadvantage because I'm going back and forth with my left and right hand to control the stick. But so it could be better when you don't have to do that. But still, those are quite respectable landings. And again, it is simply watching those the it's doing what they always say, which is kind of look at the end of the runway. But what they don't tell you is you're looking at the full picture of the runway and making sure that as you are doing that final flare, the change in the angles of those sides of the runway don't change. So let's see if that helps. I hope it does.